Anna, 55, clutched her first skein of Brooklyn wool, still smelling of upstate sheep, when a stranger in neon Crocs tossed a half-knit scarf into her tote. "Keep going," she winked, vanishing into Union Square's farmers' market bustle. Anna stared tangled stitches, not quite a gift, not quite a burden. Her apartment smelled of turmeric and loneliness. But this was an invitation. That night, fingers fumbling with foreign yarn, she mapped a plan. If cold streets wouldn't embrace her, she'd weave. Anna's fingers trembled around that Brooklyn wool, its chunky twist rough yet forgiving against her palms. Like her new city, all edges softened by possibility. Back in Minsk, skeins had been lifelines during endless winters, each stitch a whispered promise to herself. Now, surrounded by chattering strangers at Queen's farmers' market, she fought absurd fear that her hands had forgotten their magic. She'd envisioned failure as a dropped stitch unraveling everything. One clumsy step on subway stairs, one mispronounced bodega order, and poof, she'd dissolve like steam from a manhole cover. But knitting circle she'd stumbled upon, literally, thanks to a rogue pothole, had other vibes. Women from Dakar to Delhi looped yarn with ease of tying shoelaces, their laughter stitching gaps between accents. By her third meeting, Anna's needles clicked a rhythm as steady as her heartbeat. Wool, dyed exact slate gray of her childhood balcony, became a bridge. She crafted scarves for shivering neighbors, hats for babies born blocks from where she'd first gotten lost. Each pearl whispered, "You're weaving yourself into this place." One frosty morning, a Guatemalan grandmother patted Anna's mittens, like clouds, and suddenly, assimilation wasn't a mountain to climb but a sweater to knit, one imperfect, glorious row at a time. Anna clutched that Brooklyn wool skein like a lifeline, its fibers whispering possibility. 55 years in Poland hadn't prepared her for how loud silence could be in a new country. But yarn had its own language, one her hands remembered even when her tongue stumbled over grocery lists. One drizzly Tuesday, she wandered into a sunlit community center, lured by a sign with a cartoon sheep winking beside words stitch and belong. Inside, mismatched chairs formed a lopsided circle where women, some with silver streaks like hers, others younger but just as wide-eyed, clicked needles in unison. A Guatemalan grandmother waved her over, patting an empty seat. No introductions, just a pair of bamboo needles thrust into Anna's palms and a half-finished scarf draped across her lap. "Fix my mistake?" woman murmured, pointing to a rogue loop. Anna's fingers moved on muscle memory, untangling flaw. Laughter bubbled up as others leaned in, their projects. A lopsided mitten, a sock with ambition, piling onto her knees like offerings. Farmers' markets became her classroom. Between honey stalls and heirloom tomatoes, she learned slang. "That's fire, Mrs. A." Art of haggling, $3 for bruised peaches? Bold. And that Americans loved a good underdog story. She leaned into it, leaning 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 into it. Leaning Creator clutched that Brooklyn will skein like a lifeline, its rough fibers grounding her in a city that still felt too loud, too fast, too not hers. 55 years old and starting over was no joke, especially when her hands ached from subway turnstiles and her accent thickened under stress. But knitting? Knitting was a language that needed no translation. She set up a folding table by a farmer's market in Sunset Park, stubborn as pigeons eyeing her yarn. A handwritten sign propped against a mason jar of needles. Stitches and stories, new threads welcome. First, passers-by barely glanced. Then a woman paused, fingers brushing a half-finished scarf. "My grandmother made these," she murmured in hesitant English. Woman just nodded, sliding over a spare pair of needles. Mistakes piled up like dropped stitches. A sweater sleeve turned lopsided. A hat's brim curled like a stubborn leaf. But each misstep felt familiar, almost comforting. Knitting didn't judge her fumbling English or her bafflement American grocery stores. It only asked for patience. Weeks in, her circle grew: Ukrainian grandmothers, Ecuadorian teens, a Somali chef who knit spices into his patterns for luck. They traded slang and silence in equal measure, their needles clicking like metronomes keeping time for new rhythms. Anna's wool skein, now frayed from use, became their shared flag. One icy morning, a city worker eyed their gathering with clipboard-ready disapproval. Anna met his gaze, binding off a row with deliberate calm. "We're not blocking anything but loneliness," she said, and kept knitting. He left. Circle stayed. Brooklyn never got quieter, but Anna's hands learned its vibes. Push and pull of resilience, tight-knit strength of starting fresh. By spring, her table sagged under casseroles and wool donations. She'd unraveled plenty, but never one thing that mattered. Showing up, stitch by stubborn stitch. Creator clutched that Brooklyn wool skein like it held answers. Maybe it did. 55 years old, hands steady, she marched into a crowded farmer's market, unfolded a folding chair right between a kombucha stand and a pyramid of heirloom squash. No fanfare, just needles clicking. Skeptical glances bounced off her like dropped stitches. One vendor, a woman with a perpetual frown, snorted. Another hobbyist. But woman wasn't knitting scarves. She was stitching a flag. Not of any country, but of interlocking threads, colors melting like languages into something new. Her fingers flew. A crowd gathered. Someone snapped a pic. By sunset, her makeshift banner stretched 10 feet, a woolen mosaic of every hue in market. That scoffing vendor? Stunned silent. Then applause. A teen shouted, "That's fire." Anna grinned. Writing my own story, she thought, slyly fixing a tiny goof near edge. No one noticed. Next week, she hauled a basket of skeins back, plus a sign. "Stitch your story." Newcomers hesitated, then sat. A Ukrainian grandma, a Guatemalan teen, a Somali chef, all weaving their threads into tapestry. Anna's wool skein, now half unraveled, passed hand to hand, becoming a bridge. Vibes shifted. Market buzzed. By month's end, her circle was a movement, her bold act a beacon. No lost souls here, just hands creating one loop at a time. Anna's Brooklyn skein grew shorter with every stitch, but her world grew wider. Those first lonely weeks unraveled fast once she turned nervous energy into knit one purl one rhythm. Farmers' markets became her hunting grounds, not just for chunky merino, but for kindred spirits. Soon, her odd habit of muttering stitch counts under her breath drew smiles, then questions, then a circle of chairs in Washington Square Park. 55 never felt so fierce. She guided trembling fingers through cast-ons, her wool symbolizing more than yarn. It became a lifeline stretched between old roots and new blooms. Ukrainian grandmothers swapped floral motifs with Ecuadorian teens. A Somali doctor found calm in cable stitches after 12-hour shifts. Laughter tangled with dropped stitches, languages colliding like variegated yarn. Anna's initial survival tactic now wove a safety net for dozens. By winter, her original skein had transformed. Scraps bolstered community quilts, hats warmed bus stop regulars, and her circle's creations piled up shelters. Assimilation wasn't about shedding skin but knitting fresh layers together. Grab needles, cast on courage. Your next stitch changes everything.